What's going on, guys, and welcome to your fourth AngularJS tutorial, in which we'll be discussing in a brief upon what are directives in AngularJS. Now, in the last few tutorials I used ngModel and ngBind, which are two examples of what we call directives. Now, one thing I need to tell you is that you have got the documentation of AngularJS at this URL, which is angular docs.angularjs.org/guide/ basically just the guide one, and this would give you access to the documentation of AngularJS. And trust me, guys, make this documentation your friend if you want to learn AngularJS, because there are many things which I may even get skipped by the mistake, but this documentation is very well written for beginners as well as professionals. But this documentation has got some difficult terms which I'll make easy for you. So directives, according to this documentation of AngularJS, it says at a high level, directives are markers on the DOM element that tell AngularJS compiler to attach a specific behavior to the DOM element or even transform the DOM element and its children. So in simple language, what does directives mean is, directives are pretty much like some sort of sticky attachments to any of your elements, and you could actually make use of directives somewhere else in your code itself. So from this example, if I copy these two right here and paste it, now I have binded a name directive to this div, and what would happen is, whenever I type something in this, since this ngBind says me to bind whatever I attached as name, therefore all the text which I type inside this text area would automatically pop up under this one. Similarly, instead of this, what I can do is to call this name is to use two curly braces, and this would work simply same. So let's go a little bit down in the documentation, and it says matching directives. Before we can write a directive, we need to know about all that. And in the following example, AngularJS says that input element matches ngModel directive. So ngModel is a directive, ngBind was a directive which I used in the code, and there are many more. And normalization is just explaining whatever AngularJS does in the HTML. So this is a nice little example which is using ngBind as a directive, and it says normalization strips the your binder, the directive, and data1, which is used for validating your HTML5, convert your colons, dashes, or delimiters to camel case. And by that, what it means is that if I do like ngBind name, then ngBind data ngBind and ng underscore bind, ng colon bind, and x ngBind technically means same. So whatever you use, there's no difference. But if you are using it on a production side, then I'll recommend you to go with data ngBind, because first of all it makes much sense, and the next thing is that data makes this Angular directive a valid HTML5 attribute. So in the documentation, if we look down a little bit, then we have got directive types, which are special directive types which we would be discussing in future tutorials. And we have got other directives, some of which includes ng attribute bindings. Then we have got these controllers, which we'll be discussing later on, because this documentation links every aspect with each other thing. So just follow my advice and make this documentation your best friend if you really want to learn Angular. And that's it for this tutorial for the directives one, and we'll be taking it really slow and easy so that you understand everything. So I'll see you then in the next tutorial. Until then, stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe.